Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another episode of Added Time, the last before Christmas. Going to be answering your questions that you kindly submitted in today's show. But before we get into any of that good stuff, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also do me a favor by hitting that like button if you're enjoying the content, because it helps out the channel as well. Let's get into your questions. Firstly here from Kwame No, who asks, what do you think is the problem with Werner? Because he plays well but cannot seem to finish. Once again, failing to score last night, Timo Werner. It's frustrating at the moment for Werner in front of goal. It's a long run now. I think the longest without a goal since 2016 for Timo Werner. I think that shows you how good of a goal scorer he has been, and I think will be in the end for Chelsea. I think the encouraging thing for me about Timo Werner last night was he didn't hide in that game, and he's not a player generally that has been hiding recently for Chelsea. I feel he really benefits from Tammy Abraham being on the pitch more than Olivier Giroud, because I think Tammy's sort of movement and all-round play, I think, benefits Werner a lot more in terms of the interchangeability of those two players, and I think it allows Werner to get a little bit more central, so he's able to pop up in good areas. He's getting into good positions. He's not hiding away from those chances. I think my concern would be if he misses one chance in a game and it shatters him for the rest of it. That wasn't the case last night. I think a goal will come, and hopefully he has a blistering game against Arsenal and potentially scores 3 goals, because you do think if one goes in, it's one of those cliches with strikers, but once one goes in, I think a lot will go in once again, because I think he's just too good of a player at the moment, or too good in terms of his movement and speed. I think he'll find a lot of goals for Chelsea in the end. So I'm not too concerned, especially when Chelsea are winning games and you've got players like Tammy banging in goals as well. I think he's just going through a frustrating run at the moment, and hopefully it comes to an end soon for Chelsea. Careless Music asks, do you think we need another midfielder to play alongside Mason Mount that can control the mid and that can give those through balls like a Cesc Fabregas type player? I think that player is Hakim Ziyech, and we're just missing him at the moment through injury, and hopefully he'll be back for the Arsenal game. I think that's the player you're thinking of. Of course, he's not playing as a central midfielder, although he can play as a number 8, potentially if Frank Lampard wants him there. We're seeing him at the moment and predominantly, and I think this will be his main position for Chelsea, on the right of a front 3. But he is a winger. He's not your Christian Pulisic type of winger. He does naturally go to central areas. He drifts a little bit deeper to find those passes into the likes of Werner and Tammy. I think that's the player Chelsea have, and I think that's why Ziyech, as we've seen in recent weeks, it's been a big miss for Chelsea creatively. His passing ability with that left foot is incredible. Through balls, crosses from wide on the left, cutting in onto his left foot, but also from deep. I think, that Sheffield United game was such a great game for Hakim Ziyech in terms of showcasing what he can do and how much of a threat he can be in a game. I don't think Chelsea need to go out and sign another creative midfielder. We spent a lot of money on Kai Havertz. That's a long-term signing. Hopefully he'll get back into some form. I think even at times Kovacic can potentially do that for Chelsea. Mason Mount, I mean, that's the thing. I think Mason gets underrated in terms of his creative ability, setting up another goal for a Chelsea defender last night from a corner. His corner taking ability this season has been exceptional for Mason, so I think that's a player that gets underrated as well creatively, so I don't think that's an area that needs stressing. A. Faris asks, should we sign a new winger? If yes, who should we sign? I don't think we need a new winger actually. I know there's that concern over the fitness of Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi and Ziyech all getting injuries this season, especially the fact that both Hudson-Odoi and Ziyech went down basically at the same time recently, and that's hurt Chelsea. But I think the fact that there is enough options in wide areas for me, so I can't see Chelsea signing one. The issue is, who you're going to sign. I see a lot of names brought up in terms of this, and I think that Chelsea, I don't think, especially in January, are not going to go out there and spend 60 million on a winger. I'd be absolutely stunned, especially given how much we spent in attacking areas in the summer, and the fact that Frank currently is playing Timo out wide, can play Kai out there potentially as well. I just can't see us going out there. I think it's going to be a long time till we massively recruit in that area again, because we've just done so. So especially with Pulisic as well, I think it's unlikely, to be honest. Calvin H asks, do you think Chelsea will be able to loan or sell Alonso and or Kepa in next month's January transfer window? I think it's big for both of these players that they get moves away soon. I think Kepa's the more tricky of the two, to be honest. I can absolutely see Alonso making a move in January. He's just a complete outcast now at Chelsea. He's not even getting in the squad anymore, even with more subs that Frank Lampard has. He's looking to younger players. That West Brom game was basically the end of Marcos Alonso's Chelsea career, and it seems that he Lampard has basically been done with him at this point. You know, the fact that Emerson is now second choice and the fact that Chilwell's now gone down with an injury and it looks like Emerson's going to come back into the team, and even the fact that Dave can play there as well. So I think in January, Alonso is one of those players I'm instantly looking at and going, he'll probably be off. Where he'll go, maybe back to Italy, I'm not entirely sure. But I think that's one player right at the front of the list in terms of getting out the door. In the case of Kepa, I think it's a lot more tricky. I suggest you go and read an article. I think it's by Simon Johnson in The Athletic earlier this week about Kepa Arrizabalaga, sort of the problem Chelsea have of shifting Kepa, even having to cover his wages on a loan for the rest of the season. I do think that because of the current pandemic, the situation we have, and the fact that January is one of those months that's always difficult to buy and sell players naturally, I think Chelsea may still have to wait till the summer where hopefully the market's a little bit more positive and you can shift some more unwanted players. I think out of the two, I'm going to say Alonso is more likely to leave because I think it's an easier deal to get done than, say, Kepa. I think it's such a tricky thing for Chelsea, so that may have to wait till the summer. But yeah, both of these players are absolutely on their way sooner rather than later from Stamford Bridge. Carefree195 asks, do you think Liveramento deserves a chance in the first team with Reece injury? He may get a chance, say, in the FA Cup against Morecambe. That's a game I look at where you're going to see strong rotation from Frank Lampard. So that's one area and that's one game I look at and maybe say, yeah, that's a chance to bring him in. I think generally it's unlikely, to be honest. We're hoping that this Reece injury isn't too serious and he's only being rested as a precaution for a couple of games. Then he'll be back in the first team. If that situation gets worse, then maybe he'd look to get him in the squad, potentially on the bench as backup for Dave, if Dave is now the first choice right back, at least for the time being. But no, I don't think he'll be getting into the first team. He's an impressive player. He's growing each week, and I think that eventually he will break into some first team minutes, potentially in a cup game, but also getting that loan move to help him in his development. But Chelsea, in terms of fullbacks in our academy, it's so exciting, isn't it? You know, Chelsea just seem to be able to get good fullbacks and develop good fullbacks. You think of Tariq Lamptey, Reece James, Liveramento, even before that, Jay Da Silva. So it's a strong area for Chelsea, absolutely, and I think that's an exciting thing to think about in terms of production line, in terms of the academy into the first team going forward. CFC Taron56 asks, obviously Oli has started a lot for us recently, but do you think Tammy provides more tactically than Giroud? I do agree that in terms of Tammy, I think there's a lot that he does for this team that goes unnoticed or undervalued by Chelsea fans. I think, you know, although you'll look at Tammy and Giroud and say they're both quite tall physical strikers in terms of a similar profile, you know, Tammy is much more mobile and much more athletic in what he can do. He can press from the front, which I think helps Chelsea if we're looking for a more pacey attack, especially on the counter. Like last night when Chelsea were defending quite deep, I mean, it really helped us to really wrap up that game against West Ham at the Bridge. I think in terms of the mobility of Tammy Abraham, it's massive because he can get across the front line. He can switch with the likes of Pulisic and Werner, which I think helps Chelsea. That's something Giroud just can't do at his age, with just the natural sort of nature of his game. He isn't going to be one of these strikers that is instantly pressing from the front, that can really harry defenders, but also maybe switch with a Timo Werner. I think that's what helps Werner and Pulisic get into those central positions. So I think, you know, I think it's what you want on a game-by-game basis. In terms of form, I think Giroud can be a really, really good option for Frank Lampard when need be, as we've seen. I think it's great now that Lampard is in a position where he's got a couple of options there. You know, obviously Timo's off form at the moment, but looking in that central area where Lampard's lining up at the moment, in terms of it being between Tammy and Giroud, he's got two players fighting for minutes who are consistent goal scorers at the moment. You know, they're putting the ball in the back of the net. In previous years, that's not been the case. You know, in terms of competition in that area, it's always been either one predominant striker that you know, that's the main striker. He's the only one that's going to get us goals. The backup striker can't score. You can't really rely on him. I think it's massive that Lampard, when we've got injuries, when we've got fitness concerns, a lot of games, it's just a positive that Lampard has two distinct options when need be, and I think both of them offer a lot to the first team, but Tammy proving his worth once again last night against West Ham. And finally, Chelsea Till I Die asks, should we change formation given our current lack of fit wingers? Now, this question was given to me before the West Ham game, but I still think it's relevant to answer because you got to think about the future once again. If we have another, say, injury crisis with our wingers, right, and we have a lack of fit wide players going into games, key games, you know, should Lampard change formation? I think predominantly it's going to be the 4-3-3 based on the width we have. Luckily, we now have Ziyech back fit. We have Hudson-Odoi back fit. He was on the bench last night, didn't play at all, which is good for his fitness and sort of freshness going forward. Christian Pulisic coming back into full fitness once again and looking sharp again. So, no, I don't think he's going to radically change the formation. I think he's settled now on the 4-3-3. I think it's working. I think it benefits more players than it doesn't in a system, which is what a coach should be doing. You know, get the best out of most of your players. I think at times Frank will be flexible enough to maybe shift to a 3-4-3. At times, you could argue in some games it looks like a 4-2-3-1 where either Mason or Kai could potentially be a number 10. But I don't think he should be thinking of that regularly. Only in extreme circumstances would I consider it. I think now we've finally got a formation that seems to be working consistently. I think he should be settling with that for the long term, in my opinion. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.